Yes. um, let's see. Who else? I can see Faith and Gary and Carl. Hi, welcome. And James is with us. Hi, welcome. Mateus, I see.
Yeah, here. Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
There's a phone number as well, and I don't recognize the number there.
Christina, it's Carol in Colorado. Hi,
Okay.
You can't see me.
Okay, great, Carol. Welcome.
Thank
so
you.
happy to have you with
you.
us. And I see Tara. Hi, Tara.
Hi.
Hi. And it looks like there's also Joanna's iPad, and it says Joanna is connecting to audio. I don't know who that would be. And they may not have connected yet. Maybe still trying to do that. There's Tara. Welcome. Nice to see you. Good morning, everyone. Brad is somebody that I've never met, and so I'm so happy to welcome you, Brad. My name is Christina Monson, and I'm one of the meditation teachers here at the Padmasambhava Meditation Center. And I'm connecting with you all this morning from Nepal, which is where I spend a significant part of my time. So, not making any assumptions about meditative experience among us in the group. Let's just all pretend that we've never meditated before. And we're going to see what it's about. Before we begin, let me just ask, does anyone have a question or something about meditation, their own practice that they're exploring?
Hey, Christina, it's Carl.
Hi, Carl. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wonder if at some point you can talk a little bit more about the different types of awareness. Something I've been looking into, and I've been reading Mingyur Rinpoche's book, and he talks about 3 different types near the beginning of the book, and I'm thinking it's more of a spectrum and maybe something that might be of interest to other people too.
Oh, thank you for that question. Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to share some of my thoughts on that. Absolutely. Anyone else? Something that they've been thinking about?
I'll ask a question. I've been thinking about working with emotion, and it seems that when the thoughts arise, it's very clear that it's thinking, but when the emotions arise, it's sort of an all-encompassing, especially if they're strong emotions. And I just wondered if you talk a little bit about that.
Thank you. You have foreknowledge, Tara, because that is going to be the next class in the 6-week introduction to meditation course that we're in the midst of. But absolutely, I would love to talk on that this morning. And I see Brad also just reflecting on different versions of Tonglen that the Queer Dharma group has been exploring. Because there is so much sadness in the world right now. There absolutely is. So yeah, maybe we can do a little bit of Tonglen this morning as well. Think about that. Um,
I can add something to this. This is already a rich mix of of topics. I've been having a really hard time with the perception I have of what everybody's doing in terms of social distancing, wearing a mask or not. And I've been framing it for myself in a way that's like it's a very easy thing to put a mask on your face when you're thinking about protecting others. Or for me, like that's the motivation. And I experienced many people in Colorado not even wanting to do that. So there's something about selfishness and selflessness, and I've been kind of sitting with that as I've been practicing, watching myself react really with a lot of aversion and a lot of mistrust of the wider community around us in Colorado and in the United States. So chewing on that. Yeah.
Thank you, Tracy. Yeah. I hear how to be compassionate. How are we expressing compassion these days? How are we expressing care to others? What does that look like when people have many different interpretations of what is appropriate, what is not appropriate?
Christina, this is James.
Yes, hi James.
Yeah, I'd like to jump on to that last thought. I too have, my wife and I just went to the grocery store a few hours ago. And it was weird. We went to Target at the Colorado Mills, and every single person had a mask on. We were like, wow, that is so incredible. It was a perfect record. I'd never seen that in weeks. And then just as we were going out the door, I said to my wife, wasn't that amazing? We just saw everybody had masks on in the whole store. At that point, like 5 people, mainly men, came walking through the door without masks on. And so you're over in Nepal, this is becoming weird over here in the United States. We're breaking literally down into 2 cultures, and those are, I guess, the compassionate people and the people who just don't give a shit, pardon my French. But it's just the way it's become. And so I too have become very mistrustful. Going to the grocery store has become a very big deal because of this. Our national government, for whatever reason, will not impose a mask law for the next couple of months, saying that everybody has to wear a mask when they go out. And there's a refusal to do this. And we have some weird things that are starting to happen in various states. So we're up for a weird summer of things. If people don't settle down and everybody get on the same wavelength here, which is we're taking care of each other, I'm a little bit burned out on really being compassionate for these people who don't care. I really don't care at this point what happens to them. The information is out there that it's better if we all wear masks to protect each other, not protect ourselves, but protect each other. But there's just I'm guessing between 10 and 20% of the population here in the States, they're not going there. They're not getting it. And frankly, if they keep doing this, they're about to be sick as hell. So we're looking at some dark times.
Yeah. Thank you for that. When I think about what I've been reading in the news all over the world, what strikes me is that in such times, you see many people expressing the very, very best of human potential. And you see the opposite as well. And you have everything in between, the whole spectrum. And I'm so grateful for those reflections. Let's just sit with that for a moment and take it up again as we think about the practice of Tonglen and see how we might connect it there. There certainly are disturbing actions by people all over the world, i.e. intentionally trying to spread infection, things like this that really do cause doubt, confusion, and a question of what does compassion look like? What does it mean to be compassionate with that? So thank you all. We have a rich array of topics to reflect on and to bring in. Hi, Chime. Hi. I've never met you, but I heard about you. So welcome to the Thursday night sitting at the Padmasambhava Meditation Center.
Thanks a lot. I'm excited to be here. I feel like I already know you, but it's nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. Yeah, very happy to have you join us. So we were just going around the group and seeing if people had some specific questions or reflections coming up right now about their practice. And we've had a number of people share some powerful experiences right now about the times that we're in, connected to what it is to be compassionate in the pandemic, how some people are openly flaunting the desire to protect others by not wearing masks. How do we also distinguish between thoughts and emotion? Beautiful question from Tara. Thank you so much for that. In fact, I woke up this morning thinking, how should I approach teaching meditation tonight? Is it time to talk about emotions and thoughts? That was on my mind. So.
Well, I just have to share, if I can jump in. My father was taken to the ER today on what might be his last day. So my emotion is extremely high and very worried. And, you know, so I'm really working with the richness of that, and the healthcare workers, no families allowed to go in with the people to potential situations. This is what I was so afraid of happening. And today we don't know. I'm still waiting. And you may see me go to stopping video because I have to call the doctor and see if I can find out what's happening. So, but it feels very real right now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Tara. I'm
Tonglen from my dad. So
that's right. Yeah, may he pull through strongly.
Thank you.
Sorry to hear that he's there. And then a wonderful question from Carl about different kinds of awareness. And so when you mentioned that, Carl, what came into my mind for us to do as we start off practicing tonight was to do a practice that I call 360 hearing. And to do this, as usual, I invite all of you to take a comfortable seat, the posture that you would usually assume when you practice meditation. And so in our tradition, the emphasis is very much on keeping the spine upright so that the breath flows easily. And the connection between the breath and the mind is one that is clearly taught and elucidated in many different ways. So when we're hunched over or bent and our breathing pathways are not clear and easy, then that also has an effect on our mind and thought activity. So that's why it's important to keep the spine straight. And we also emphasize keeping our eyes open And there are certainly plenty of meditation techniques where where the eyes are closed. I have found personally in my own practice that dulls my awareness and brings me into more of a sleepy state. And purpose of meditation is not to block out perception and the phenomenal world. So that's why I recommend leave the eyes open. We're working with that from the beginning. So this is practice where we'll begin as I recommend usually beginning, which is to take a couple very deep kind of belly breaths. Just kind of feeling your stomach inflate like a balloon, and then just relaxing, exhaling completely. Taking another big breath, inflating the belly like a balloon, relaxing completely, exhaling. And another, and then relaxing completely. When we do that, the whole nervous system in our body calms down a little bit. And it helps us become present right now in this moment. This is a practice in which we use our hearing as a way to connect to the expansive and all-encompassing quality of awareness. So bring your attention to your hearing. There may be different sounds right now in your house, in addition to the words that I'm speaking that you're hearing coming out of your computer. And observe the capacity of our hearing faculty to hear simultaneously from all directions. I'll say that again. So unlike sight, where most of us see what's in front of us, and to some extent, a little bit what's on the side of us, our hearing is not limited by direction. You can hear sounds that are in front of you, that are behind you, that are above you, and that are below you. So listen above you right now. Bring your attention, any sounds above you, and imagine for a moment that you can listen to the blowing of clouds far, far up in the outer reaches of the atmosphere as dusk descends. And then next, bring your attention to listening down below you. And imagine that you can listen into the very core of the earth. Maybe some bubbling of the hot liquid core. And then next, bring your attention to listening around you. You might mentally travel in a circle, first listening straight out ahead of you. Maybe from that direction is my voice coming through the computer. And then around to the right. Any sounds that are coming from that direction. Moving your attention all the way to the back of you. Listening for sounds that are there behind you. And then slowly moving your attention all the way around to the left. Listening out through the left side, around to the front again. And for a moment, imagine the immensity of the scope that your hearing can encompass. And with your attention still on what you're hearing, spread into that immensity without any judgment about what you're hearing, fully present as you hear sounds without any analysis of them. Letting your awareness expand to encompass the entirety of the domain of your hearing. Just settle right there. Thoughts arise, and then they dissolve. Within this open space. Where you can hear anything. Bring your attention as well to listening into the silences. Take another moment in which you listen above, below, out to every direction as far as you can possibly imagine, all at once. And then as you end, you might give thanks to your faculty of hearing. So thank you. Carl, your question was the inspiration to do that practice with you this morning. Because your question was about awareness and different kinds of awareness. And to just speak to that briefly with what comes into my mind, there's a basic level of awareness that means we're alive, right? We could talk about it from that way. So being cognizant, i.e., not being unconscious, not being in a coma state, not being not living, right? Means there's some basic level of awareness that we have. Perception is happening. I would say that's kind of the first and very basic level, what it is. We talk in the Buddhist tradition about sentience, so being sentient, having our senses working, most or all of them, right? There's awareness that is just naturally there as being somebody who has a faculty of sight, smell, hearing, taste, and mind to some extent, I would say. Then I would say that there's also a specific kind of awareness that's connected to the faculty of our mind, however we want to think about the mind. And so that is the ability, I would say, to be aware of, to cognize in some way what we're hearing, what we're tasting, what we're smelling. So if we think about, in some ways, the mental faculty, the mind has a special place in that without the mind, right, it's possible to perhaps have a sensation of touch, but I don't know if it's possible to really make sense of that as a sensation of touch. So in the Buddhist tradition, we talk about the consciousnesses that are associated with each of the senses: the ear consciousness, the eye consciousness, the olfactory consciousness. So there's our sense faculties, and then there's the consciousness that's associated with those. I would say this is a subtler level of awareness that is related to us making sense of our sensory perceptions. And there's the first moment of that, which I would say is non-conceptual. There's sight, it's a form, knowing that. And then there's the subsequent moments of that, which get into discursiveness. I like that form. It's big, it's small, it's beautiful, all of that. To some extent, I would say this also is the workings of our mind, our consciousness working that way. And yes, that's part of awareness. Now, oftentimes, in just an ordinary way of being, we're completely engaged in the subsequent moments of mental consciousness, the analysis of everything that we're perceiving. And we're not necessarily using our consciousness, our mental consciousness, to be aware of itself. But that's what's amazing about being in a human form. That we have the capacity to be self-aware. That our consciousness can actually be conscious of itself. And that, I would say, is the gateway into awareness with a big A. Which is non-conceptual. Which is completely different than the ordinary discursiveness of everyday mind. And in different meditation traditions, connecting and discerning, I would say discerning between ordinary mind and awareness, the big A, is the crucial key starting point for meditation practice. Oftentimes, we're so habituated to mind's discursiveness that it takes a while to just sit with that and start making a different kind of relationship with it, allowing it to naturally unravel itself before glimpses of big A awareness can start to powerfully unfold, such that in our experience then there is something different that we can drop into besides just the thinking mind. So that's not just some of my thoughts about it. I'll pause there for a second if anybody would like to reflect more. Carl, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it was very good. I really appreciate the discussion on that. Thank you.
You're welcome. In the month, 6 weeks meditation, introduction to meditation, there was a short reading that I offered from Suzuki Roshi in which he talks about small mind and big mind. In some ways, I sense that the discussion there is talking about the same thing. Big mind is awareness with a capital A. Because just thinking different thoughts isn't the extent of possibility of consciousness. At least I don't believe that it is. And I think that one of the gifts of meditation is just that, a journey and an exploration. What is there beyond just my everyday thinking mind? What might be there? What could be there? Tara, I was thinking then also about emotion. I once had a teacher say to me, emotions are just another guise of thoughts. And that's an interesting point. And I wonder, and I'll ask you all the question, is it possible to have an emotion without any thoughts associated with it? Any thoughts or emotions about that?
I would
Christina? Oh, go ahead.
I would say that with there's a sense, I would say, use the word sensation as a distinct, as an experience that that doesn't have a thought associated with it. But when I think of emotion, I label what those emotions are: anger, fear, jealousy, joy. So there is, for me, there's always a thought, either a story. The thought has a text to it. It has a storyline to it, and the emotion is the reaction to the story, in my experience. But there is a kind of perception or sensation, which I don't know if that's emotion, but I notice that is as not being thought-based. And there's some freedom in that kind of thing.
A physical sensation?
It's actually more of maybe sensation is the wrong word, because that does involve the senses, doesn't it? Maybe perception is a better word. But of course, then that has a mind quality. I'm struggling to find the right word. I just know what it feels like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, anyone else?
Christina, this is James.
Yeah, James?
I have a little dog, and
Yes.
my little dog has emotions, but he has no thoughts.
How do you know that your little dog doesn't have any thoughts?
Well, I thought I was crazy at one point for even thinking that. But I talked to the vet, and the vet said, yeah, animals, the vet deals with animals all day long. And he said, yeah, animals have emotions. They can't think. And that's what separates us from the animals. So just in answer to your question, yes, it appears to be possible to have emotions, but no thinking.
Thank you. I would love to have a conversation with your vet, with my 3 dogs. And I would challenge him about that. I don't know what my dogs might be thinking. And I certainly sense their emotions. And I also sense and observe intention in them. And intention, motivation, it's hard for me to imagine that doesn't come with some kind of thinking. Now, I'm not saying animals think in the same way we do. And in fact, again, this probably is one of the biggest distinguishing factors. I don't think animals have the capacity to be self-aware. So thank you for that reflection, that let's say, hypothetically, it is possible to have an emotion and no thinking. And maybe James' small dog does. Maybe mine does too, I don't know. She can't tell me what she's thinking, but I certainly sense intention from her.
I know when my dog is happy, And I know when my dog is sad,
Yeah.
and a few other emotions that flit in and out there. So,
right. Well, yes, and I think those of us who have animals do sense. They have plenty of emotions. And we as human beings also have plenty of emotions. And how often do we have an emotion that we're not even aware of? Right? The possibility for us to become aware of the emotions that we're having is a gift of being in a human body that makes it possible, right? So I asked you all this question because I think it provides a very powerful way of starting to become more aware of your own emotions. I don't know the answer to it per se. And again, I don't think there's necessarily one right answer to it. I think in my own experience, sometimes it's clear that I can be thinking about something and that brings an emotion up about it. It also is clear to me in other times that I just have a feeling, just feeling sad. And it's hard to place my finger on what that would be. And to come back to Brad's point, I'm sensing a lot of people are having that experience these days. And that sadness may feel somewhat non-conceptual because it's not as though one would necessarily even be thinking about, okay, the current pandemic or something that I saw today. But we've been deeply affected, I would say, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, by this massive wave of tragedy that has swept over the world. So that then it wells up as sadness in us, to me, is very natural. And sometimes what can be helpful, and I would say even meditation practice that allows you to work with emotions. And so Tara, this is, I think, one of the things that you had brought up, can be a practice where you go through just 2 little steps around emotions. And so noticing, first of all, that you feel sad. Just observing, first of all, I feel sad. I'm sad. Kind of sitting with that, sitting with the physical sensation that may be connected to it. Even asking yourself, where is that in me? It could be lodged in the gut. For some people, it's more in the throat, but often our emotions land somewhere in the body. And that's the beauty of meditation practice. It's also a somatic practice. What I mean by that is it's a practice of being present in a body, in our bodies, and connecting to the sensations that are there, the physical sensations. So maybe sadness is felt. It's just like a queasiness in the stomach. And then even after it's located, to shift our mental framework from I am sad to something in me is sad. That little jump can have a tremendously powerful effect in helping us become more aware of our emotions without being overwhelmed and completely identified with them. It creates a little bit of space to be a person who's having an emotion, but not being that emotion fully. The next little jump that one could take is to rephrase that slightly to, I'm sensing something in me that feels sad. And what that allows is, again, a deeper connection somatically to that place in us where sadness is located, and the capacity to listen more closely to what that part might want to say. And so to come back to what Brad has mentioned, doing this kind of practice before even we do Tonglen can be immensely beneficial. It might be saying to us, somebody in our sphere is really having trouble, and allow us to then kind of focus in on, say, one person. It might be also saying something to us about ourselves, that it's a sadness that's also connected to something that we haven't been doing for ourselves or that we haven't been listening to in ourselves. And we can then also use the practice as an opportunity to do that. And it also, I would say, could lead both to the just powerful intention that's connected with the practice of Tonglen. And I'm going to invite us to do that together in just a sec. And to just having something bubble up that is a concrete action that we might want to take, connected to the emotion that we're feeling in this context, giving the example of sadness. I'll just pause there for a second and invite any thoughts or reflections on that. Okay.
Hi, Christina. I'm sorry, it's Carol. Do you want to go on?
Please
or
go right ahead. No, go right ahead. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I don't know if I have this right, but it's like, I believe you said something like consciousness, being aware of consciousness. And I really liked what you said about identifying because sometimes the body or the psyche, whatever it is, just goes. And to identify exactly what's happening, both on a mental and physical level, I really liked how you said that. I can really relate to it. And then the next part, which I'm working on, is letting that ride on the breath so I don't get swept away by the emotions. Just breathing it and just kind of sitting with it and see, like I believe you said, to see where it comes from. Is it present time or someplace in, the past or, even past lifetimes, whatever. But I really appreciate you saying that, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol, for those reflections. Yeah. Tara, did you want to say something as well?
Just that I notice in my meditation that when I'm settling, and I related to what you said about wanting to do something in reaction to a strong emotion, that's sort of if I distinguish between levels or layers of subtlety, that there's something a lot more subtle when the settling happens after you're in meditation for a bit, and where you're not at, you may ask yourself, what am I experiencing? But there's a sense of asking yourself, what am I experiencing that has words to it? And there's a sense of just being it or just feeling it without having a judgmental reference point to it. Just
thank you. Absolutely. The other part to having emotions is that it's completely the most natural and magical aspect of being alive, being human. And so for me personally, one of the teachings that has been most influential in my entire life is the teaching in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition on the alchemy of emotions. So once I heard a teacher say, nonviolence at its core means no longer battling our emotions. That's a completely different landscape than the one I inhabited in my teenage years. And not to say that I still don't don some armor for various emotions. And yet, that our emotions are filled with wisdom makes tremendous sense to me. How we access that wisdom. So in other words, how do we get to the core of the information that they're giving us, that is valuable, that is strong, that may provide motivation for action in the world that's beneficial? And I definitely draw a distinction here. I would say all emotions are equal in being emotions, just feelings, sensations, but they're not equal in their capacity to help or harm. Anger is very dangerously destructive if acted upon. Love has greater potential for bringing goodness into the world. So I would say I'm not completely unbiased about emotions. Probably none of us are. And that's also what makes having difficult emotions harder. We don't want to feel low or sad or angry. I don't think anyone who's in the grip of strong anger can be happy at the same time. I'd be willing to to debate about that fact. But I think really, really completely subsumed in anger doesn't leave space for happiness. So we have, I think naturally, we have bias towards the emotions that make us feel good, that feel better for us, and aversion towards the negative emotions, which compounds them. And that's definitely what Buddha was pointing out, I think, in the very first teaching he ever gave. So everything may be perfect in your life, but you're just not going to escape some pain. Just no doubt about it. It's going to happen at some point. And then for many of us, because pain isn't something that we want, we have aversion to it, and then that compounds it. So sadness also probably has many, many wisdom qualities to it. How can we access those and allow it to become a gateway into positivity, into goodness, into expansion, into deeper empathy, into whatever it could be? I don't think there's a limit. In many ways, I think that is part of the essence of the practice of Tonglen. And so just, Brad, as we began tonight, brought up an inquiry about the practice of Tonglen. And so I'll just go over it very briefly, not assuming that everybody here is very familiar with it. We talked about it this past week as well in the introduction to meditation. Tonglen, literally, these are Tibetan words that mean sending and receiving. And so what are we sending? We're sending out absolutely everything, anything positive, healthy, pure, beneficial, inspiring, uplifting, healing, good that there could ever possibly be. Things that we can visualize, things that we could barely even imagine. We're sending that out and offering it to others. And what are we taking on? We're taking away whatever it is that causes pain to other beings. And so that definitely requires a bit of courage. For sure it does. It requires a bit of courage. Because right there, then we can come into, but wait, what's going to happen to me if I take that? I would say that this practice is one that has embedded in it an aspect of faith. An aspect of faith in the power of positive intent. An aspect of faith that, in fact, we never, ever could be harmed by wishing to take away others' pain and suffering. The only thing that's going to be harmed in that practice is a narrow, self-centered perspective. So, in many ways, this is a practice of opening our hearts par excellence to emotion. Shall we do it a bit together now? Let's practice Tonglen. So sitting once again in a comfortable position. Bring up an intention for this practice. And generally, we talk about intention in the Buddhist tradition from that perspective of bodhicitta. Wishing to uplift our own minds into greater realization in order to be of benefit and service to others. And so in this practice as well, just bring forth that intention in your own words. For the next few minutes, through this practice of sending and receiving, really bring forth a heartfelt desire to ease the pain and the suffering, the sadness experienced by so many right now. And you might have one person in particular that's kind of bubbling up for you. Somebody you know that's really struggling right now, maybe more than one person. Maybe it's just the all-encompassing shared experience right now of people struggling in myriad different ways. Whatever the case, you can bring your awareness to one or many, and imagine that you're sending them out as you exhale. Ease, well-being, happiness, relief. You send that out to them, visualizing white light. And that light could be filled with actual material things that people need right now. Maybe some need food, maybe some need money. Maybe some just need some companionship. Some people may be lonely, feeling isolated, friendship. Can you imagine that reaching one or many? And then as you breathe in, you join that visualization with a sense of just taking away from one or many others their pain, suffering, hardships, and difficulties. And here you bring up the courage, the kind of warrior, noble intention, just like that of so many caregivers these days. You take that away from others. It comes in the form of dark smoke. that upon your inhalation just completely destroys any kind of self-centered and small-minded perspectives that you might have, and opens your heart even more. I like to do this practice with my eyes closed. And so connect to that visualization as you breathe in and breathe out. You also can feel free to just focus on one part of it for a few breaths. Just letting the inhalation be natural, and then focusing your attention as you exhale on the sending aspect. Imagining all who are sick right now being healed. Just immediately, spontaneously. And you can switch if you want and just emphasize the receiving aspect for a few breaths. Just imagining taking away fearlessly from others all that makes pain for them. You might notice as you do that, that you feel even stronger. Even fear or uneasiness come up in you. If that happens, then you can just move to focusing on the sending. And if at any point you feel it's kind of too much or overwhelming, then you just bring your attention back to the immediacy of your breath. Just being gentle in that. Drop everything and just travel with your exhalation out. Dissolve. Letting everything settle. You can take a couple more breaths wherever you are. And as you conclude, then you can make a dedication. What are you dedicating? Dedicating whatever positivity and goodness comes from the power of your intention to one or many. You can open your eyes if you had them closed. And just come back. Thank you all for doing that. And just want to check in with Brad.
Yes.
Yeah, just getting a sense from you, Brad. How is that? How is that either different or connected to what you've been doing as well with Tonglen?
I enjoyed the piece that you shared about the aspect of faith. So the faith of being able to have the courage to take on whatever sadness is something that I think has come up in our group that I'm going to be able to share with them, that I think will be an interesting piece to add to the conversation. I think that's one thing. I think the practice you shared of actually like focusing on the receiving or the breathing in, and then letting go of the necessarily the sending or the breathing out at times is another piece for me that was a helpful technique. Sometimes I get like the breath is coming quickly, and it can be happening a little quickly. And so I felt like that was a helpful aspect. I think the third thing that happened tonight is just as you were talking about the sending in the introduction to Tonglen you were sharing, you talked about the putting out into the world and the positives and that energy and the hope. And at that very moment here in Denver, and I think around the country now, people were howling. So it was 8:00 p.m. here, and I'm guessing you've heard now that that's a practice that has started. And for me at that moment, I hadn't really thought about it, but it felt like the community as a whole was doing sending of our own through that howling of really putting something out there collectively to offer appreciation and gratitude, and even sending out something collectively. So it was another piece that was timed so, excuse me, so well that it didn't feel like a coincidence.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Brad, for sharing that. I know that practice is happening, but I definitely wasn't watching the timing for it. So
the other thing,
so yes, the universe conspires.
It
Please.
does. And I'll share too for Tara that I hope this practice helped her. I did envision her father and her today in the hospital that she was talking about, and envision sending white light and health and wellness and reunion back to them. So I hope that's helpful to her and her family tonight.
Thank you so much, Brad. Tara, if you're still with us, may your father receive that healing energy, all of those intentions, and quickly recover. I'll pause just to see if anyone else has a reflection or wants to share something.
Christina, I was wondering if you could clarify one of your comments about the dark smoke serving as a vehicle to kind of dissolve the small mind. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for me?
Yeah. I think so here's sometimes what can be a challenge with this practice. And that challenge is, I don't want to hurt myself. This is such a wonderful practice, because that question, and it's absolutely different for everybody, but just even a little niggling of, really? Okay. So I'm going to take on this mass of negativity and evil and suffering, whatever it is, right? Can I do that? What might happen if I intended to do that, right? One of the techniques, and it's not the only one, but one of them is to imagine that badness, if you will, has that form, and that form is dark smoke, because this is a practice that involves supports of visualization for it. And that it has a quality of destruction that we use to destroy what we don't want or need inside of us. So I said right now, small-mindedness or selfishness, those are just two possibilities. They're not the only ones by any stretch of the imagination. The key is that faith. That faith that the intention to remove difficulty from others in and of itself is so fully wholesome that we're not going to be hurt by it. Now, another possibility is to just breathe it in without any concepts about it. You know, I've reflected on this a number of different times. And as we know, people who are working as caregivers, and I don't know, some people here tonight could be caregivers. I don't know what each and every one of you does. Probably in many ways doing this practice. Of course, they're doing this practice at a very basic and fundamental level. And in every day as being people who are committed to healing others, physically or mentally. And as somebody who works with people's mental well-being, I also know my energy for that goes through waves, right? When I'm feeling very good, it's less likely that I'm deeply affected if I'm working with a client who's very depressed or dealing with some difficult mental and emotional states. And I imagine it's the same for people who are doctors and nurses and helping care for people physically. So it's sometimes when our energy is high, can just go in and just, we can take it on, and we don't need to do another step of it's destroying whatever's unwanted in me. We're more fearless, just depending on circumstances of time and day and our own mind and energy. And other times, if we're lower, then maybe we want to add another just layer of protection which I think is that second part of the visualization. That we take that on, and what happens to it? Where does it go? Doesn't something need to happen? And then we can bring that as part of it. It destroys in us what we don't want, what doesn't serve us. So I would encourage you to play around with that. It may be that sometimes when you do this practice of Tonglen, you don't need that extra part of it. You're just feeling powerful in body and mind and fearless. And so almost even if I'm hurt, this is what I must do. The power of it is such that the positive intention serves as a kind of Vajra armor, if you will. Faith, I don't know if that addresses it.
That's great. More than I can say. Is it just that sort of nuance that you added with how that metaphor can work as a method, and it's so helpful to me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. You know, in Brad's note, what he said is, and I really appreciate this, you've been exploring different versions. The Queer Dharma group has been exploring different versions. Yeah, explore different versions. Fantastic. Explore many versions. I think there are certain practices that don't at all need to follow some kind of rigid framework. Of course, there are parameters to it, there are supports for it, there are ways that it's been taught, but the point is to make it your own such that it moves you, that it allows a sense of expansiveness, of your connecting to your very best, compassionate, good heart. And that in and of itself then allows you to show up that way for others. And, you know, maybe, James, it comes back to what you mentioned at the beginning. How do we be compassionate with people that we perceive to be selfish, to be ignorant, to be not thinking of others? And in some ways, I would say, isn't that the moment to be most compassionate? Aren't people who, in our perception, are behaving in undesirable ways most deserving? And compassion, again, I would say, it has no limits of how it might look. It's not, we're not talking about stupid compassion, idiot compassion. I would say people generally act based on the tools that they have available to them. Tools of how to think about things and therefore how to act about things, how to be, their own storylines that have brought them to that particular moment in their life. So what the storylines of a lot of people who are going around without masks and so on, we can only guess to that. So I would say in some ways, people that in our perceptions appear to be acting in unfortunate ways are even more deserving of compassion. And how that looks, how that manifests isn't anything that's fixed. To see people who are walking around without masks and what would it be like if I immediately think, well, may they not catch COVID-19 and may they not infect anyone else with it? You know, just is a little flip, right, of emotions of aversion to that, or irritation or anger that could come up. Not to say that theirs won't come up, but we could then just like lay down an intention about it right there. That flips our own experience of it. And I would never underestimate the power of intention. That's the beauty of Tonglen. And we all know this. We all know this. That's why everybody is coming out at 8 o'clock and hooting. The intention to show support for caregivers in a physical way, in a perceptible way, has tremendous power in uplifting people and having them feel cared for. So mental intentions that even don't necessarily have a physical dimension to them still carry a tremendous amount of power. All right. Would anyone like to offer a reflection or something before we say goodnight? I invite you all to explore these practices over the next week or so. Explore Tonglen, make it your own. Explore the practice of working with your own emotions through feeling something and then articulating that a part of you is feeling something, and then articulating to yourself that you're sensing a part of you that's feeling something. And you can also play with the 360 hearing practice to connect to big mind. Listen into the core of the earth. Listen into the upper reaches of the atmosphere. Listen to the wind blowing on the moon. And have a wonderful 2 weeks. Thank you all for coming tonight. See you again.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you all. Good night.
Night,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Bye.
Christina.
Thank you all. Bye. Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
the birds. I'm thanking the birds too, Brad. Good night.
Night.
Best to your father, Tara.
Yeah. How are you?